Hey everyone, Jake here for American Muscle, and in this video we're taking a look at the 5/8 Industries SS Sport Coilover Kit, fitting 2011 to 2023 Challengers, excluding Scat Packs and all of the SRT models. Whether it's that low stance, improved handling, or maybe a bit of both that you're after, this kit from 5/8 Industries will get you there. It features adjustable ride height and really solid construction, and with the low price, it's an accessible addition to any build. Now there's quite a bit to discuss here, but the eagle-eyed among you probably spotted the most important thing, and that is that this setup is ride height adjustable. So it's definitely going to lower the stance of your Challenger. If you want to keep it closer to stock height, you can dial it all the way up, or if you want to absolutely slam it, you can drop these down. Now this kit should give you between 1 and 3 inches of lowering both front and rear. Just use the included tool to spin the collars and get these things adjusted exactly where you want them to sit. Now these are Mono 2 dampers both front and rear, so they are going to be stiffer than your factory shocks, so expect that going in. You also get new springs both front and rear to compensate for that lower ride height. Since you're getting less suspension travel when your car is lowered, things need to be stiffer to compensate. But these are again not going to ruin the ride of your car. Again, it's just going to be a bit stiffer, and that's all going to give you more control over the car. So if you're really going to put your car through its paces and you want to improve the cornering prowess, these are going to help you out. The bodies of the shocks are 52 millimeters in diameter, and they're made from electroplated carbon steel, with 20 millimeter and 14 millimeter hardened piston rods front and rear respectively. These are going to be a pretty strong setup. Inside the shocks, you'll also find 44 millimeter high flow CNC machined 6061 aluminum floating pistons with polyurethane oil seals and multi-thickness valve shims. So these are not just some standard shock. These are definitely a performance-oriented setup. The springs are also worth noting here because both front and rear, they are SAE 9254 cold wound, meaning that the metal hasn't been heated and subsequently weakened by that process. As we discussed earlier, these do have higher spring rates than your stock ones, meaning that they will be a bit stiffer. Pricing, however, might just be the biggest win here, as the whole kit is only going to run you about $750. And for a set of adjustable coilovers, it's about as inexpensive as they come. And while you don't get adjustable damping here, this is still a really solid setup for a street-driven car. It's going to make for a great stance and some improved handling, so it's a great value for your money. Installation is going to get a 3 out of 3 on our difficulty meter, and the job should take you around 5 hours to complete. Now this may not look like a ton of stuff, but there is quite a bit to do, and it's going to take you some time to get it done right. However, since these are coilovers, the good news is there's no need to mess with the spring compressor, and everything is just going to simply bolt into place. Just know that it's going to take you some time, and you're also going to need to allot some time to make adjustments to get that ride height exactly where you want it. With that said though, let's head on out to the install bay and we'll show you how to get this one done.
Tools required for this install include impact gun, a ratchet, an adjustable wrench, 18 millimeter wrench, 21 millimeter ratcheting wrench, a hammer, an extension, 10, 12, 13, and 18 millimeter sockets, 15 and 16 millimeter swivel sockets, a pry bar, and pole jacks or a jack. What's up guys? Today we're installing a coilover kit on our Challenger. First we're going to watch a quick uninstall video showing you how to remove your factory suspension components, and then I'm going to meet you right back here for one final step of our uninstall and the install.
First step, we're going to get our wheels out of the way. Our factory lug nuts here are 22 millimeters, so I got my impact gun. I'm using air tools for this, but if you don't have air tools, of course a lug wrench works just as well. This is just going to make life a little easier. All right, next up, we're going to disconnect some of the ABS lines here so we don't put too much stress on them as we remove some suspension components. Now these are just rubber. Just going to pull straight off on that guy. There's 2 more clips on your brake lines as well. Just going to disconnect those to give it a little bit more slack. Next up, we're going to disconnect our sway bar end link from the strut body. Now this is a 21 millimeter nut. Now using air tools, it can be a little easier, but if you're using an impact gun, it might start spinning the bearing, in which case you want to be able to hold onto the backside with something to keep it from spinning. All right, so now you can pull the sway bar end link out of the strut body, and I like to just put that nut back on just to keep it safe, so we don't lose it. What I just did was I put a pry bar right on the other side of the spacer to put a little tension on it as I took it off to keep it from spinning. All right, next up, we're going to tackle the nut holding on our upper control arm to the knuckle itself. Now, this is an 18mm nut, and what we're going to do is use a swivel socket on my impact gun, or you can use a ratcheting wrench. That'll work as well. We're going to work this guy off. It might also be a good idea to put a pry bar on the spring and pry down on it so it doesn't shoot off. All right, we're going to keep this on a couple of threads just to make sure we can disconnect these two without it shooting off. So just put the nut on a couple of threads. All right, so now I'm going to pry up to disconnect the ball joint here. So now we can pry back down, take that nut off, and work this off easily. Just guide the knuckle back down. And I'm just going to thread the nut back on so we don't lose it. All right, use that same 18mm socket, and we're going to remove the bolt holding on the factory strut for the bottom control arm here, the lower control arm. Now, the nut is already on the strut body, so we don't need a wrench on the other side, but I am going to keep my hand here to keep it from popping off too quickly. All right, next up, we're under the hood because we have to remove the 3 nuts holding on the top of the strut tower. I'm going to twist off this cap here, and I'm going to set that right onto our cowl there. Now that will expose the back 2 there. These are 13mm, so grab your impact gun and your socket and get those 3 off. And as you remove the 3rd one, the strut's going to fall straight through, so you want to have a hand on it to get it off. All right, now that you have a hand on it, you can push down on the suspension assembly there to pull the strut away from the lower control arm and then off of the vehicle. It's time to get started on the rear springs. Now, to uninstall our factory ones, it looks a lot more complicated than it actually will be. So you want to grab a 13mm socket and an extension. What we're actually going to do is lower down our 1 exhaust pipe. Now the reason being is to lower down this rear cradle, what we're going to do is remove this bolt holding it to the back end. But we can't back that bolt out because the tailpipe's in the way. So what we're going to do to make our lives just a little bit easier here is grab this 13, we're going to go up, remove the brackets on our hangers that hold the isolators together to the frame. We're going to remove that bolt, it's a 13mm bolt holding it to the frame, lower down that hanger, and there's another one right on top of the exhaust tip. With those 2 out of the way, we'll be able to lower down our exhaust tailpipe just enough to clear that bolt. Get that backed all the way out. With that in mind, we're also going to remove the bottom shock bolt. That's holding that to the cradle itself as well. We just need a little bit of clearance to get the factory one out. First step, 13 socket, extension, impact gun. Let's pop off those hanger brackets holding it to the frame. Got that one loose, we got one more under the tailpipe tip. All right, this one's a little bit trickier to get to right above our tip, but we just have enough clearance to get to it without needing a swivel. You can see that cap back coming down. Just let it hang off. We're gonna put our bolts aside. All right, guys, now you can see we have it lowered down. You can see us getting a lot more clearance, and now we have enough room to back that bolt out. And of course, if you needed to, you could pull down just a little bit on that back tailpipe, give yourself more clearance, but I think we're good right there as it is. All right, the next step here, I actually want to get our pole jack out. Now guys, if you remember, we're using a lift here at our shop, but if you're on the ground, hydraulic jack does the trick just as well. You want to have a pole jack here. We're going to jack this all the way up just to put a slight bit of tension, take a little bit of tension off of that cradle. So we're just barely holding that up. So a little bit of tension. Do the same thing with a hydraulic jack if you're working on the ground. We don't want that cradle to shoot down with all that tension from that spring, so you want to support that weight. If you're up in the air with a pole jack, that's a good way to go. If you're on the ground, a hydraulic jack will do the trick. Makes it easier to lower it down. All right, guys, with that weight supported, you want to grab an 18mm socket and 15mm wrench and pop off the bottom shock bolt holding it to the cradle. The 18 is going to go on the nut, 15 is going to go on the bolt head side on the opposite end. Now, if you need to, grab a ball peen hammer, just tap that out to get the bolt to come through the other end. Next up is that bolt on the back end of that cradle. Grab an 18mm wrench to hold the nut side and a 15mm socket to get the bolt head. Make sure at this point you have that weight supported. All right, guys, once that bolt's out of the way, we can start lowering down our pole jack ever so slowly. Now, like I said, this is under a lot of tension. You don't want to get it down too quickly just to unload all that pressure. Go very slowly with your pole jack, and if you're using hydraulic jack, just slowly rotate that handle to get that to lower down. Once you get that nice and loose, you'll see all that pressure comes off. You get a lot of play in that spring. Get your jack out of the way if need be, or lower it all the way down. Make sure you're pulling that isolator out with it.
So now we just have one last thing to remove from the rear of our car, and that's going to be our shock. So we have two 16mm bolts. I'm going to grab a 16mm swivel socket and pop these out. Now we're gonna have to compress our shock a little bit to get this out. So you can just put that back in the upper mount and push up on the bottom of the shock. And then you can slide that out of place and do the same thing on the other side. So now with all of our factory components removed, I've got a setup on the table here so I can show you how to adjust each of them. Now we've got these spanner wrenches included in the kit. We're gonna use those to either break the collars free or spin the collars to make our adjustments. So now to adjust these off carb, what we're gonna do is break this bottom collar free. So we're gonna take the spanner wrench, it's got that little hook that's gonna hook into one of these grooves. And you can crack that free. And then with that free, you can turn this in or out to make your adjustments. Now, going off of the factory strut, if we just make this an inch shorter, that doesn't necessarily just make the car go an inch lower. So there is gonna be some trial and error here. We're gonna get them set up so that we're at least a little bit lowered out of the gate once we put these on, and then we can fine tune our adjustments on the car. So lining these up, I'm just gonna go about an inch shorter on our new one. And then spin that collar tight. Take the spanner wrench and turn it the opposite way. Tighten it down. And then coming over to the shock, is the same thing. Spanner wrench, break that collar free. And then same thing, twist this back and forth to make your adjustment. Line it up with your old one. We're about an inch shorter here. So just tighten that collar back down, make sure everything's straight. And twist it the opposite way with the spanner wrench to lock that down. And now over here with the spring, similar setup. We've got our collar here that we're gonna twist this top collar. That's gonna sit on the bottom of our spring here. So the higher you make this top collar, the higher that the car is gonna be. So once again, I'm just gonna line that up to our factory spring. And throw that isolator in there too. And we're gonna take about an inch lower for that one as well. So then once you have this done on one side, you're gonna just mirror your adjustments for the strut, shock, and spring for the other side as well, and we can get these on the car. So now the first thing we're gonna do is get our shock in place. So I'm gonna get this kind of close to the lower mount, get this in the upper mount, and just hand tighten my bolts for now. And now I'm just gonna run these in with the impact. I'm not gonna tighten them all the way down so that we still have a little bit of maneuverability here. So now we can get our spring into place. Now our collars are gonna be at the bottom. They're gonna go into that lower cradle. So I'm gonna kind of go in from the back, get it into the upper mount, and then we can just drop it into the lower. And now with it in the lower, I'm gonna start cranking up on my pole jack to raise this up into the upper mount. We'll get everything aligned before we start really putting tension on it. Now once you're around the upper isolator here, you just want to twist this to the right until it bottoms out and hits that end point. And then you can go ahead and keep raising it up. Now before you start really cranking down on this and putting some tension on that spring, you just want to make sure that your lower cradle is straight and make sure that you don't have any play in your pole jack, because this is going to be under a lot of tension. It can shoot out if you're off center or anything. Same thing if you're doing this on the ground with your jack. So I'm just going to raise this up until our bolt hole lines up. We're pretty lined up there. We might have to get a pry bar in between our subframe and the lower cradle to kind of push it out so that we can get our bolt installed. So our hole is a little off, so I'm going to take that pry bar in between the subframe and the cradle just to pull forward a little bit, so that I can line my bolt hole up. And then once it bottoms out on the other side, you might need to readjust your pole jack to get this side to go up a little higher. Now it looks like we are going to be able to do that with the pry bar. So now that we have our bolt through, we can throw our nut on the other side. And then we're going to take a 15mm socket. I've got a swivel socket for this side, and an 18mm wrench, and we'll tighten that down. Now we can get our bottom shock mount into place and throw our bolt through. Then get our nut on the other side. And then we're just going to take that same combination of 15mm socket and 18mm wrench and tighten that down. Now if you can't get your bottom bolt hole to line up for your shock, you might have to do a little bit of adjustment. Now you could either pull this whole shock back out, which is a little bit more of a pain, or you could just break your bottom collar free and you would just turn the shock body left or right to raise or lower it. Now, the direction to go is based off of this bottom collar here. If you were looking at the bottom, you would obviously twist that whole thing to the left to lower it out of the body. You twist it to the right to tighten it up, to compress it. So if you were to want to raise this, you would twist the body to the right, and if you want to lower it, twist it to the left. Now once we've got that out of the way, we're going to take our 16mm socket and go back up top to our top bolts and fully tighten those down. So now to wrap up the rear, we're going to reinstall our two hangers. So we'll get that flipped the right way. And I'm going to take my bolt with a 13mm socket and extension, thread that in. Do that same thing on the rear hanger. And once you got those threaded in by hand, you can put that extension socket on an impact and fully tighten it down. And then you can repeat the entire process for the other side. Now the first thing we're gonna do on the front is raise our strut up into the upper mount and install our 3 new nuts that were included with the strut. Now we'll raise that strut into the upper mount. Now if you have a strut tower brace, you can put that down on top of your studs first. We don't have that, so I'm just gonna thread our nuts on. And you're just gonna put these on loosely for now, so you still have some maneuverability in the strut to get it into the bottom mount. Next we can hop back down to our lower mount. We're gonna reinstall our bolt through, and then we have a new nut going on the other side. So we'll kind of get this into place and lift up on the knuckle. Slide that through. And I'll get that nut threaded on the other side. And then while we're down here, I'm just gonna pop the sway bar link in. And thread my nut onto there. Now I'm gonna get an adjustable wrench on the nut. An 18mm socket, and tighten this down. And then for the sway bar end link, I'm going to take a 21mm ratcheting wrench and a 10mm socket to hold the stud and tighten that down. Next we can reconnect our upper control arm ball joint to the knuckle. Thread our nut back on. And then we'll grab our 18mm socket and tighten it down. So now we can go back up top and take a 12mm socket to tighten down these 3 nuts. And then once you have everything tightened down, you can put your cap back on. Now depending on the year of your Challenger, this might look a little bit different, or if you have the strut tower brace, you probably won't have this at all, but it'll install the same regardless. And then repeat that whole process on the other side. Now I already showed you how to adjust your rear suspension components during the install in the rear. However, the front, after we've put this on and put it back on the ground, we're sitting a little high up here. So we're gonna have to lower it down. So I'm gonna take my spanner wrench, break the lower collar free on our coilover, and then we can twist the body into the lower mount to lower it. So now we're gonna take our spanner wrench to break this bottom collar free. So we're gonna get that hook in the groove, break that free, and we'll just thread it off a few since we're gonna have to go down and in. Now for our top 2 collars, these are press fit together. They're tightened up against each other. You're going to be using one of these to tighten, one of them to loosen the height here. You don't want to adjust the 2 collars to change the spring tension here. So from the factory, they're pressed together like this. So that means to raise it, you're going to use the bottom collar and twist to the right. And to lower, you're going to use the top collar and twist to the left. Now we need to lower here, so we're going to go to the left. And now once you have that where you want it, you can spin your lower collar back on against the bottom, and then just take your spanner wrench and tighten that completely down. And then do the same thing on the other side.
So that will wrap up this review and install of the 5.8 Industries SS Sport Coilover Kit for your 2011 to your 2023 Challenger, excluding Scat Pack, SRT Demon, SRT Hellcat, SRT Jailbreak, and SRT Superstock.
Thank you for watching, and for all things Challenger, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.